Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Earlier this month, Button and Spoon, which had already been operating successfully in Bridgetown, opened a second tea room in Wexford town. One of the co-owners of Button and Spoon, Nuala Grant, joins me now to discuss this expansion. Nuala, yourself and Nigel have just opened a second Button and Spoon Tearoom, but take us back to the pre-Button and Spoon era and tell us where your career had taken you.
I've been in the food industry for, the last 20 odd years, but it was always on the more manufacturing, large scale commercial side. My most recent job would have been with Glanbia and the consumer foods business, and I did all their private label food development.
So why leave a company like Glanbia and risk being self-employed?
Yeah, it was a big risk. I think a lot of it for us was lifestyle. This idea had always been brewing in the back of my head. It was there. And it never really went away. So at one point I had to kind of say, okay, I need to look at this. I think it was also about family. I was doing an awful lot of travelling. So I was travelling up and down to Dublin to City West. I was going to Kilkenny. I was on the road every day. And Nigel and I were like ships in the night. We had 2 young kids. We had a foot in both camps. It's very hard to establish a life and a personal life in one county when you're working in another. And I think we were like very many couples at the time who were struggling to keep everything together.
So talk to me about the idea behind Button and Spoon and where it came from.
If I was to be really simple, it was about building the kind of place that I would want to go with my family to eat. The whole thing, the kind of environment that I wanted, and the kind of place we wanted to eat, and eating the kind of food that we wanted to eat. And that was really the simple core of what it was.
Now, I know that you had a very definitive concept in mind for the type of environment that you wanted to create for your customers. How did you go about realising that?
It took a long time to find the right premises, and I think part of it was that the premises was absolutely critical. We had recognised that there was an opportunity in the area in which we lived, but again, in rural villages, you're very limited on the type of premises that are available, and then you've got environmental issues, you've got planning issues, all of those things. So it actually took from me leaving my job to actually opening Button and Spoon, it took nearly 3 years, and when we found the right premises it took 16 months. Now all of that time I worked initially on the business plan, and it was about understanding who we were talking to. It was about understanding what people wanted. It was about, doing my market research. It was about looking at other businesses, not just in the county, but outside, and all over the world, and what the trends were and what people were looking for. And I think that grew all the time, but it was always going back to the business plan. So every time we found a premises that we thought might be interesting, I went back at the plan time and time and time again, and I challenged all the things that I thought, and I talked to people, and that was where we kind of honed the experience, I suppose, and what we wanted to do. And if I look at the business plan now and read it in retrospect, we pretty much nailed it. There were a few things that we thought we would add to the business, which we've kind of knocked on the head along the way, but looking at the business plan, what we have now is very true to that.
And in terms of your menu choice, what inspired the food options for Button and Spoon?
I think it started with the baking, and I often say that the business is built on a foundation of cake, and it is, because cake is one of the most emotive things in the world. I love to bake. And I was very true to very traditional methods of baking. The ethos is that it has to be fresh. It has to be home cooked. We cook from scratch and we cook to order.
Now, looking back at the early days of the business, Bridgetown, as you say, is quite a rural location. So how did you set about attracting customers to the premises?
Well, I think probably in the first few weeks everybody came because they thought we weren't going to last very long, and that, we'll go and see what these people are talking about, because, opening a business like ours in a rural village in the middle of a recession is something that people thought was completely mental. And I suppose in many ways it was completely mental. But I suppose people bought into the concept through the Facebook page. I suppose that's where I started. And I launched the Facebook page 6 months before I actually opened the business. And people bought into the story because we've shared the story with everyone. I was so excited myself about it that they just loved seeing the business develop. So the entire plan from, the get-go, and the renovation and everything else, the renovation of the building that we have. And the building we have, and I'll go back to the point I made earlier about how critical the premises is, that building that we're in was the heart of that village and has been for the last 150 years. It was the village store. You could buy everything from a needle to an anchor. I have people coming in now in their 90s saying, I remember my parents sitting me up on the counter right where your counter is now and buying me, my father came in to get a piece for the tractor and buying me a lollipop. They just had this connection and the word spread. We didn't advertise because initially we said, well, let's just open and we'll iron out all the creases and we'll settle ourselves down and then we'll start advertising. But it built on word of mouth. Our customers have come to us because somebody told them to.
And what inspired the decor? Because it's quite vintage, isn't it?
It is. It's very vintage. I don't know. I think it's me. I think it is a style that I love. And I think over the years and in the last few years, in the last 20 odd years, we've become very, as our food business, our food industry in Ireland has grown and we've looked further afield. We have a lot of very modern, swanky coffee shops and we've got a lot of coffee shop chains, but I think every rural, village in the country should have a tea room. It's what people would expect to see. They wouldn't expect to see a Starbucks or a Costa in Bridgetown or in, Kilmuckridge or whatever. They expect to see a traditional tea room, and it's the kind of environment that I love. So I just started gathering china and plates and things like that.
And Nuala, it was always very important to you that Button and Spoon would be considered as a family-friendly venue. But what have you done to ensure that the Button and Spoon experience could be enjoyed by both parents and children alike?
Having children of my own, I think what we don't do is we don't give children enough credit in what they want to eat. And I think children's menus do lack that respect for children in many ways. And I know my children have never really wanted to eat off a kid's menu. They wanted to look at the adult menu and they wanted to choose things from that, and they would, they didn't necessarily want the chicken nuggets and chips thing. So we don't have a children's menu, but what we do is that if there is anything on the menu that children want, there is a smaller portion available for them. For me, it's always really important, especially in our environment, which is, as you say, vintage and china teacups and everything, that when a family comes in, I almost acknowledge the kids first. Because if the kids are happy and if the kids feel welcome and that they're not just an addition to the parents instantly relax. And people, like, we've got these little button bouquets on the table and kids will instantly be attracted to them, and parents will go, no, don't touch. And I'd say, let them play with them. There's nothing they can do with them except play with them, and if they pull them out, they pull them out. We'll put them back. Give them a china cup, allow them to eat the same way as adults do, and allow them a bit of comfort, because if they're happy, we're all happy. And we have a lot of kids who actually bring parents in, not the other way around.
Now, in addition to your day-to-day trade, you decided to introduce a monthly ladies' night and to open up the venue for private parties. What prompted this move, and how successful have these events been for Button and Spoon?
I think the ladies' night really started as a result of, nighttime started full stop as a result of customers asking for it. And that started almost from day one, people saying, will you open for dinner, will you open for dinner? Ladies' night is something I know that one of my sisters actually had been to a couple of things like that in Dublin, and I thought, well, maybe it's a nice environment for mums to be able to get out and dads at home with the kids. And so we started doing it, and we started it on Little Christmas on the 6th of January, and that was the first night we did it, and the place was heaving, and it's been a huge success since then. I think we do one sitting, come out with the girls, you sit, you have dinner, you have chat.
Now, earlier this month you opened a new Button and Spoon Tearoom in Wexford town. Why did you decide to extend the business into the town?
I suppose part of that again goes back to the customers. One of the things that we've been hearing for a very long time from people saying to us, I wish you were in town. I don't always get the chance to get out to Bridgetown. I wish you were in town. I wish you were in town. And somewhere in the back of our head there was always that idea that, look, we'll look at another location somewhere down the road. And then we were approached about the premises, which was the old Bean and Berry, and we were approached about the premises to come and have a look because it was available, and we said we would. And I think once you say that and you go in the door, you really have invested yourself in it already, because you start thinking about the possibilities of what it could be. And it happened pretty quickly in the end, because we only started looking at the premises at the end of October, and by Christmas the deal was done, and we've turned it around in 6 weeks. But I think it was a good move for us, and I hope that it stays being that way, because it was a customer-driven move in a lot of ways, and it's because customers asked for it.
What were your initial thoughts when you went through the door of that premises?
I've always kind of worked on my gut, and my gut instinct has been quite good to me over the years, and I've learned to listen to it. And I could see it. I could see the potential. I could see the potential in what it could be. And as we walked through it and we walked through the building, I could get the feel for it. And so could Nigel. And I think it was excitement. It was that feeling of, yeah, there could be something here. And I think it's nice to walk into a building which needs you to put your stamp on it. It needs some work, it needs some renovation. You can kind of strip away the old and do something completely new. And what we've done in this building, as we did in Bridgetown, is completely new and different to what was there. And the reaction has been incredible from people since they've been coming in. They're very excited about it.
And did you feel that there was less risk associated with the opening of the second tea room due to the fact that the brand had been so well established and there is now a proven demand for your offering?
Oh God, no. I think the risks were different this time round. I don't think there's ever less risk. I think the risks just change. The risks we had when we opened Bridgetown were very different to these ones, from the point of view that here, one of the simplest things is that there is an anticipation. People understand what we've been doing in Bridgetown, and I keep saying I hope we live up to everybody's expectations, because there has been such excitement and almost a frenzy about the whole thing, which has been phenomenal for us. I think there is always the risk that we have 2 premises. We want to maintain Bridgetown. It is our baby. We are passionately committed to it and to all of our customers, because they've been incredibly good to us. So for me, it was almost like, for a while I found it hard to get excited about town, because it was almost like finding out I was pregnant for the second time and wondering how I was going to love the second baby as much as the first one. And it is really down to that, because we've put so much of ourselves into it. So there are different risks, and I think that's just the nature of the beast.
One of the risks associated with any business in opening a second location is the cannibalisation of their first business. Have you seen any impact in relation to that, in terms of people that might have been regulars in Bridgetown, maybe travelling out from the other side of town to Bridgetown, that now instead are deciding to go to Wexford?
I think it's early days. I think what we are seeing is we're seeing a lot of familiar faces in town, and they're just saying, we're so delighted you're here, so that when we're in town we can come here too, which is fabulous. I think there will be a certain amount of it. I think it's only natural. I think Bridgetown is a destination. It's not somewhere you come upon by accident necessarily, and it's not somewhere you're passing on a regular basis, whereas town would be, and we'll pick up more foot traffic. You have to make a decision to get in your car and drive to Bridgetown. So I think there will be a certain amount of customers who will say, you're in town now, I don't have to go all the way. But in the same breath, it's a very different eating experience. Town is busier. It's a shorter period of time. People don't have as much time because they're at work or they're shopping or they're here for a reason. So they don't have that long leisurely time to sit. Whereas Bridgetown, you go, you make an afternoon of it, and it's a different environment. So both the venues, same type of business, but give you a different experience.
And what structures have you put in place to manage the challenges which running 2 businesses in 2 different locations might present you with?
Well, we have decided to divide and conquer, Nigel and I, and we do recognise that it is very important for both of us, from a management perspective, but also from an emotional perspective and from a customer connection point of view, that we are in one of us is in each location. We're also hoping that, having worked together for nearly 3 years, we will have a very happy marriage now, because Nigel has one and I have one, and we won't kill each other. But I think we wouldn't have scaled this business up to 2 locations if we didn't have our systems in place in the background. So behind what looks like a very comfortable tea room environment, we have a very technology-based business, which is managed almost paperless, management of it now, and we keep a very, very tight rein on what we're doing, and we manage it at a very deep level so that we can control it, because it does get away from you very quickly, especially when it's as fast moving as our environment is. So for us, in order to be able to do this, we had to have our systems in place. So when we had that, we were then comfortable that we could scale to 2 locations quite simply, as it turns out.
And is it your plan to open on Sundays, and do you plan to open for dinner? Do you plan to replicate the ladies' night that you have in Bridgetown and Wexford Town?
We will. I suppose our core business is our daytime tea room, our full breakfast and lunch menu, our cake and tea and coffee. And that in town, like we did in Bridgetown, we want to get that right. We want to make sure that we have the systems in place and that we can deliver the level of service that our customers expect and have seen. So we will do all of those things, but over a period of time.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast.